What is going on, guys? Welcome back to BlackTideTV and my top 10 most anticipated titles from E3 2018. This is not just including titles from the press conferences themselves, but will also include a lot of information, a lot of outside information went into making this list. People that went to E3 saw things on the show floor that us at home did not get to see. There was a lot of extra information out there, little interviews with the developers. A lot of channels have been sharing their own information with the general audience, and I've been taking the time to absorb all of this information and really narrow it down into a top 10 list of the most anticipated games from E3 2018. So they're not just from the press conferences, and there's a very clear reason why I've placed each of these different games on the list in the place that they are. If they're not coming out for a couple years, they might drop down on my expectations list, but let me tell you that there are certain games that are on this list or certain games that didn't make the list that I'm looking forward to just as much as other games. This year was a lot easier to make a list in than previous years. There are so many great games coming from so many different developers, and it was very, very hard to narrow down this list. Let's just say that in this list, the gap between the numbers, like say the gap between 1 and 2, is so slim. The gap between 4 and 5 is just as slim. They were very, very close for all of the entries onto the list, and I found it very difficult. I've been rearranging it over and over again. But I think I've come up with my final 10. So before we get into the top 10, I have 4 honorable mentions. Cyberpunk 2077 unfortunately did not make the list, and hold off your dislikes for now. I just need more information. They showed a behind closed doors demo of Cyberpunk 2077, but they didn't show that gameplay to us. Everyone that's seen the gameplay is like, this is going to be the greatest game of all time, and they all have it on their number 1. But those are the people that have seen the behind closed doors demo. All we've seen is a cinematic trailer that didn't tell me anything realistic about the game. So I need more information. They should start sharing these behind closed doors gameplay demos with the general public. They did this last year for, I don't know if it was Cyberpunk or if it was Beyond Good and Evil 2, but they did this last year as well, where they were showing all of the great stuff that would make people hyped about the game behind closed doors. That kind of defeats the purpose of E3. The second of my honorable mentions goes to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which looks to be a great next installment in the Assassin's franchise. I've been waiting for an ancient Greek Assassins for the longest time. I'm a big Greek history fan, so I'm going to notice a lot of things in there that maybe not of other people will understand or maybe will connect with, but I've been a fan of Greek history for a long time and I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I haven't yet played Origins, and Origins was a really big departure from the classic Assassin's feel. So I still haven't played the original in this new kind of franchise of Assassins, so I'm not sure how it plays. I'm just a little hesitant, and I definitely need to catch up. That's why it made honorable mentions. Gears 5 is on Xbox, unfortunately. I'm a PlayStation fan, a PlayStation player, and I don't know if it gave me enough reason to run out and buy an Xbox One. And my last honorable mention goes to Halo Infinite. Again, it's on Xbox. I don't know if it gave me enough. There wasn't any gameplay shown. It was mostly just a trailer for the new engine that they are using for the Halo franchise, and it doesn't look like it's going to be coming out until at least 2020. So it's a few years away. It didn't give me enough to make me want to go and buy an Xbox, and of course, it's on Xbox and I'm a PlayStation player. So that's why it did not make the top 10. And starting us off at number 10, Beyond Good and Evil 2, as I've mentioned, they haven't really shown us a whole lot in terms of gameplay, and this is a huge undertaking. This game has had a long and troubled development, 15 years in development from the original. It's so ambitious, and I want it to succeed, but I need to see more information, and they've shown another behind closed doors gameplay demo at E3 this year. That's not helping the general audience, especially when you're asking the general audience to submit their own artwork, their own music, their own stuff, their own style into the game. I think that's cool, but it just shows that this game is still so many years out and how much that still needs to go into this game, and that's why it landed a little lower on my list. Number 9, Ghost of Tsushima. This game was announced at E3 2017 with a small cinematic trailer that didn't really tell anything about the game apart from the fact that there will be samurai. This year we got the gameplay trailer, and it looks like Uncharted meets feudal Japan or samurai people. It's just so crazy. I don't know what to expect from this game. Apart from the gameplay style, which is a tried and true gameplay style, we've seen it in the Infamous series, in the Uncharted series, in the Last of Us series. It's that same camera angle, that same gameplay, that same movement and combat. And to just mix the samurai formula into there, that's pretty cool. The only problem that I have with this is that it might be a little too serious. And I want to see a little bit more information from it as well, but it looks very, very concrete. It looks very true to the nature of samurai, very quiet, very restrained, and I don't know if it's going to be too serious to enjoy really well. It's not going to have a lot of jokes in it, let's just say that. Number 8, Fallout 76. I think Fallout 76 is a great experiment for the Fallout franchise, but I'm not getting behind it full force. I'm still skeptical, let's just say. The game looks fantastic, and it looks awesome to see that we will be able to play a Fallout game with our friends, but people are assholes, and this is something that I really hope they plan for. Yes, you can build your base, and then someone can activate a nuclear launch code and destroy your entire base. I'm not a fan of the settlement building from Fallout 4, and that's taking a huge front seat here, and they're really trying to push on some things that I wasn't the biggest fan of from the Fallout franchise, from Fallout 4. So I do like the gameplay, I do like the new characters, the new weapons, the new enemies, and it looks to be really interesting, but I don't know how it's going to work out with all other players. And especially that I believe there's been rumors that there are no NPCs in the game, and all of your quests come from notes and holotapes and things like that. Not a fan. I want some NPCs in there like in Elder Scrolls Online. I was expecting Elder Scrolls Online, but for the Fallout universe, and they're kind of changing it up a little bit, so it's a big multiplayer experiment. And if it succeeds, then all the better for Fallout 76, but if it doesn't, then I'm not going to be too worried about it. It's a little lower on my list, and there will always be another Fallout game. If this one bombs, Fallout 5 is just around the corner. Number 7, The Last of Us Part 2. This one is fairly low on my list only because I just recently played The Last of Us for the first time. This one was a little lower until I had finished The Last of Us, and I've raised it since then. But having played The Last of Us a few years after its original release, it didn't have as profound an impact on me as other games have. Uncharted 4 used a lot of the elements that made The Last of Us so great in its creation and in its storytelling. And so I experienced a lot of the revolutionary storytelling in video games that The Last of Us displayed in Uncharted 4 before I played The Last of Us. So, unfortunately, The Last of Us just didn't impact me as heavily, and that's why it's a little lower on my list for The Last of Us Part 2. I think it's going to be amazing. I think this is the next step in Naughty Dog's development. Naughty Dog is one of the best video game developers on the market right now. They are insanely good at what they do. And I'm really excited to see what they give to us with The Last of Us Part 2. But because I just played the original a couple days ago, it's still I'm still processing it, and I don't know how hype I can be about a sequel to a game that I've only just recently come into. I know it's going to be at the top of a lot of people's lists, but unfortunately for me, it's just, I will play it, and I will definitely enjoy it, but I don't know if I will enjoy it more than some of these other brand new IPs or other titles that I'd also like to enjoy. So number 6, SpiderMan. That's one of those brand new IPs. This one's being developed by Insomniac Games. Insomniac is another one of those great developers that I don't feel has ever really had a misstep. And this is essentially Batman Arkham, but for Spider-Man. So I don't know how you could possibly go wrong. They're introducing so many Spider-Man villains. They're opening up the wider Marvel universe for this game. The Sinister Six is in there. Apparently more enemies than we've ever seen. It's very much the Batman Arkham approach to enemies in Spider-Man. And it's an open world, open city, and you can web sling, and you can do all of the Spider-Man things in this game. And I wasn't super impressed about it up until this point. Started seeing some gameplay footage, and I'm like, wow, yeah, it's really accessible. They let you do whatever you want, whenever you want. I'm okay with this. Let's do this Spider-Man thing. Coming into number 5 and number 4 respectively, these two titles would have been my first and second pick in my list if not for their far out release date and the very little information shown at E3 2018. Just a couple logos shown, but my hype and my preparedness for these games is off the charts. I don't need any extra information, I just want a release date. These two games are going to have a profound impact on gaming as a whole, and those two games, of course, are Starfield at number 5 and The Elder Scrolls 6 at number 4. These games are a few years out yet, Starfield being late 2019-2020 and Elder Scrolls 2020-2021, and that's why they've fallen a little bit on the list, because I'd like to give you guys some of my more anticipated titles that are coming up very soon, that we know a little bit more information of. Like number 3, The Division 2. I had never played the original Division, and this is a great jumping off point for me. It looks like they've completely revolutionized the game. I wasn't a big fan of the original in how it was presented, and it was a huge hit for a short amount of time, so maybe this is the jumping off point that we need for all of the players that didn't get in on day one to the original Division. Now we have a chance to get into what the Division is, and it looks like they've really tried to fix up the end game, which I know was a big problem from the original. So the Division 2 looks to be a pretty cool game. I've seen a lot of gameplay, I've seen a lot of interviews, and a lot of people are looking up to this game as being one of the better from E3. Another surprising entry for number 2, Metro Exodus, and this one is a 50-50 for me. I'm very excited to see what this game can offer. The graphics and gameplay look phenomenal. It's the first title in the series where we'll be spending most of our time above ground, where they can really show off their graphical prowess. However, I've heard some bad things. I've heard some voice acting is pretty wonky and the gameplay's best in its Russian native language. And I've also heard of a few bugs that were going around at E3, but that could just be an issue with the show model, and they're obviously still putting the final touches on this game. But it looks very, very interesting, and I hope for the best that this is a single-player experience that Fallout fans and fans of that type of post-apocalyptic style can really get behind. I was not a fan of the original games. That's another big issue that I have. Metro 2023 and Metro Last Light. Not a huge big fan of those games, so hopefully this game can really turn the franchise around, make it more accessible for a mainstream audience, and I don't know, I'm really looking forward to it. I want to see this game succeed. Last but far from least, number 1, Anthem. A fairly controversial choice given how skeptical most players are of the title and their publisher, Electronic Arts. If it weren't for EA, this game would be a lot higher on a lot of players' lists. It's BioWare. BioWare that is behind the Dragon Age franchise, the Mass Effect franchise, and while they've had some missteps in the past, I am dedicated to this franchise. Anthem looks phenomenal. It's like Iron Man suits in space fighting aliens. You can play with your friends, an open world. There is single player content, multiplayer content. It looks to be everything that Destiny originally set out to be, and I am down for that. The game looks so great. I'm really interested in all the lore. The developers are being very good about being transparent. So many people have been asking them questions on Twitter, and they are answering as much as they can. You can tell they're passionate about this project, and that makes me really excited. So I hope you enjoyed my top 10 list. What are your top 10 or your top 3 or your top 1 of E3 2018? Let me know in the comment section down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.